Tonight we go to the video store. Tonight we browse the aisles of our memories and we pull one off the shelf. Tonight, a mid-90s Michael Bay flick with too much expositional dialogue and Nicolas Cage at his cagiest. Tonight, with Sean Connery and Ed Harris. Tonight, Michael Bay's 1996 The Rock.
Is this really Nicolas Cage as his cagiest? I don't know. I think Nicolas Cage would get cagier. I think he'd get crazier and weirder. He had already done Vampire's Kiss, where he ate a cockroach, and he got very strange. He had done some really weird, fucked up things, and I think he had. I think we've talked a little bit about this in the past, where I said Nicolas Cage gets a bad rap, and I think the rap is deserved as far as the movies are concerned, because he's been in some of the worst movies that Hollywood has made in the last 30 or 40 years. But I don't know that I've ever seen Nicolas Cage give anything less than a weird and inspired performance. And the ones that I've seen, I haven't seen everything, but the ones that I've seen have been so fucking far out there that Nicolas Cage makes horrible shit at least enjoyable from the Nicolas Cage aspect. It's you go into a Nicolas Cage movie knowing, well, this is a combination of a lot of shit, but it's Nicolas Cage. Yeah, it is. It's Nicolas Cage, and at least I'm going to have fun with that. And I don't think I've ever been disappointed on that end. Never.
What's his cagiest? Do you think it's Snake Eyes or?
I think his cagiest. Well, okay, so there's Controlled Cage when he's working with a great director versus Cage out of his mind and just having a good fucking time. And I think the two...
It's KG.
Yeah.
KGR. KGist.
But even in those films where he's working with someone great like Scorsese and Bringing Out the Dead, or I think it was either Charlie Kaufman or Spike Jonze that he was with Adaptation. They're weird, strange performances that dig into a kind of weird character study that I think most, let's face it, if Nicolas Cage wasn't the box office star that he is, there'd be no way that they would allow him to do the shit that he does in movies. He does some really weird, strange head movements, hand gestures. He takes these really weird little pauses. I remember they even put one in the trailer for Gone in 60 Seconds when they're about to steal all the cars, and he goes, "Wait a minute," and he puts his hands up, and then he just kind of shakes him a little bit, and he goes, "Okay." It's a weird little Elvis thing that he has.
Yeah.
And it's the only
like,
it's the only thing that I like about that movie. I mean, it's but it comes out of that whole, well, we'll get into it with that whole 90s era of blockbuster films that we're going to be talking about in this film. So, Cagiest, I think, Bringing Out the Dead, Scorsese's film, the Spike Jonze or Kaufman, I'm not sure who directed Adaptation, but also when he did Bad Lieutenant Port of New Orleans with Werner Herzog. Now that's a dream come true. Those two maniacs together in a film doing some wild and weird shit is a lot of fun. I haven't seen Renfield where he plays Dracula. I haven't seen... which one?
That's a recent one.
That's a recent one, yeah. There's a couple of recent films. I haven't seen the one where he plays himself hired to kill a South American drug lord. I think that could be a lot of fun. I think that could be interesting. What else does he do that is quintessentially Nicolas Cage? I think probably Con Air that we're going to be talking about next week. But this film, you see kind of the birth of Nicolas Cage really letting go and amping up the ridiculous factor to a level that is commensurate to the ridiculousness of the film. Because if you look at this film, 1996, The Rock, Michael Bay directed, Don Simpson, Jerry Bruckheimer. I think it's a Bruckheimer. Simpson had just died from a cocaine related heart issues. Like that's a fucking surprise that cocaine is not good for the heart. This film, you see those moments where Nicolas Cage, it's either going to annoy the fuck out of you, or you're gonna grow to love Nicolas Cage emphasizing every last word in a sentence. You know what I mean? Did you notice that?
I do.
Did? Yeah.
Yeah.
You're just not going to just get off the rock. There are 1,000 Marines out there ready to kill us. It's just like, what are you doing? You almost want to say, are the capital letters? Did somebody push the caps lock on the screen on the screenplay when they were writing this shit? Is it intentional, or is this a Nicolas Cage thing? There's a lot of strangeness in everything that he does, and it's a weird kind of strangeness that takes you out of any kind of reality of a movie, but makes the movie better for its existence in a Nicolas Cage world. So Nicolas Cage,
It's like what Jack Nicholson does, but turned up.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and it's weird. It's like you kind of imagine that. Oh, Nicolas Cage at his finest is wild at heart. That might be the Cagiest, right?
That's also got the Elvis stuff going on.
Yeah, the Elvis stuff, a little bit of Wizard of Oz, and a whole lot of crazy. So
there's a lot of Cage in there that we're missing. I mean, there's moments of Nicolas Cage that aren't. I think, what's the film that he did with Samuel L. Jackson where he
Amos and Andrew?
Where he bulked up.
Oh, that Kiss of Death.
Kiss of Death.
Yeah.
With the guy from NYPD Blue.
Yeah, Caruso was supposed to blow up his career.
Yeah, Caruso.
Yeah. Forgot about that film.
He was different.
Mm-hmm.
He was different for that versus Wild at Heart. And I remember he did this erotic thriller called Zandali.
I've never seen that.
It was basically, like, from what I remember, it was kind of like this, like, Billy Zane kind of. It was him. I remember it was with Judge Reinhold is in it.
Mm-hmm.
I think Steve Buscemi might be in it.
Wow. Okay.
I remember I rented it because these are the days of, hell yeah, we're in the video store, because these were the days I was pulling shit off the shelf that was like, what the fuck are you doing? What are you renting? I don't fucking know.
Yeah.
Are you in or not? You know? Like, whatever. You know, I'll take this one home. Let's pop this one in now. It doesn't matter. Okay,
it sounds like you're picking up a chick from the bar.
What are you doing tonight?
Yeah, what are you doing tonight?
We are leaving now. Face Off. You remember that?
Oh, I love Face Off. And then coupled with Travolta's ridiculousness and John Woo shooting the whole damn thing.
Yes.
Yeah, brilliant. A brilliant level of over-the-top ridiculousness that could only be possible with that kind of trilogy, that what do you call it? That trifecta of insanity. I love that movie.
This is that era that we're in right now. This is that kind of, and we've never talked about Michael Bay. We've never talked about, we have talked about him, but we've never, like, done a Michael Bay film that I can remember.
We've never dug into a Michael Bay film, and I think part of the reason is
because we hate them.
They're
fun, but we talk shit. We talk shit about fucking rah-rah, jingoistic Americana. Americana, okay, cool. I love Willie Nelson. I get it. Americana is cool. Johnny Cash is Americana.
Mm-hmm.
Americana is one thing. Kind of commercialized patriotism is another. And this has that too. But, like, you know, Pearl Harbor and all that nonsense. Michael Bay is Michael Bay.
Well, Michael Bay is cinematic cancer, okay? So let's be honest about something. He brings to it a level of visual charisma that I don't think is equaled as far as being able to hustle an audience. I think he gravitates towards the most obvious and cheapest audience manipulation imaginable. It's
Yeah.
the slow motion. The slow motion for no other reason but to build in the godliness of a character. Slow motion from either low angles or Dutch angles to emphasize this godliness of characters. All of these men in these films are overwhelmingly godlike in the world that they live in, and they're undefeatable. A lot of it is just really, I think it's really embarrassing filmmaking, and I look at each of these films as enjoyable in the sense of how bad they really are. I can't say that these are good films. They're competent in a weird kind of production value way, but they're bad films. I was really surprised to look up some of the reviews of The Rock, and a lot of them were glowing. A lot of them were pretty good. And it was weird because I remember Michael Bay falling into the category of critic whipping boy because they hated him. And Michael Bay, off of the jumping board that was Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer, would go on to create, as a producer, a number of films that would expound on his style of filmmaking, so you would get a Gone in 60 Seconds, a Con Air. I remember there was an Anthony Hopkins Chris Rock film called Bad Company.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so there was that with Chris Rock playing twin brothers, one a hoodlum, one a 007 type. I mean, really bad shit. But then you would have Bay directing the Transformer series. Horrible films that when you go back and you watch them again, you think, my God. And I think that led into the Fast and the Furious, although I don't think Michael Bay has a hand in that, but you can feel his filth all over it. Just, you know, if you've ever seen it, yeah.
Fucking like, yeah.
The gorgeous women who are just throwing themselves all over the place, scantily clad. Michael Bay is responsible for one of the worst film series that I've ever watched, and I've seen all three. I've seen all three films, and I'm probably going to go see the fourth one, Bad Boys.
Bad Boys.
Which fucking horrible films. With I think he's in part responsible for the ascent of Will Smith with that film, which I think, and I hated, and I'm not jumping on the I hate Will Smith bandwagon after the.
We've done that already.
Yeah, but I hated him before that. I hated him way before that. And I think you were rather disgusted with him too, because I think for you it was partly was knowing that he played Ali, which was a cinematic travesty. But you watch these films and you get the sense that, you know, I think a couple of weeks ago you called the Rocky films McDonald's and fast food and really like bad for you. Jesus Christ, these films make Rocky look like a fucking health food store. It makes
this is like AMPM. This is like 7-Eleven food.
This is that hot dog that's been rotating on that fucking thing for about 2.5 days, and
under several explosions in the rotisserie fucking oven.
Yeah, but then think about how many people have come out of this Michael Bay, Don Simpson, Jerry Bruckheimer world. Tony Scott's career is built out of there. I mean, Crimson Tide, Enemy of the State. Domino. Yeah,
that's already on another level. Fucking Crimson Tide already comes out of another. I mean that fits in with those kind of, you know, that's the opposite end of Hunt for Red October, fucking submarine fucking movie thing. Like, plus, Tony Scott had already fucking done the Tom Cruise shit. And plus he had already done The Hunger, the vampire movie.
But here's the thing: if you Michael Bay is basically Tony Scott without the talent, without the nuance, without the ability to dig into a
Sure.
story and find the
I'll
meat.
accept that.
Yeah, I mean, there's no marrow to what Michael Bay does. It's all just filler. It's all just fat. There's nothing that you can take away from it that says, this helps me understand something a little bit better. With the Tony Scott films, Crimson Tide, even some of the later shitty films like Deja Vu or that train film that he did, the Taking a Pelham 1, 2, 3 as well. But there was another one with Unstoppable with Denzel Washington and Chris Pratt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so not Chris Pratt, Chris Pine. Really, Tony Scott knew how to make it. He knew how to give the story weight in a way that Michael Bay doesn't. I mean,
Man on Fire, he's got that.
Yeah.
True Romance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Now you look at The Rock, you look at Transformers, Bad Boys. I can't speak to Pearl Harbor because I never saw it. By that point, I was like, I think Pearl Harbor. I think it's a real sin that Michael Bay was allowed to produce and direct that film, because that could have been a great film, and it's an important story, and it's important to the fabric of America, and I think a better filmmaker should have been in line to make that film and make it not this fucked up love story and jingoistic rah-rah kind of shit. You could have done a more leveled. For whatever people want to say about Clint Eastwood, Flags of Our Fathers and Letters from Iwo Jima, especially Letters from Iwo Jima, are really balanced and well-made looks at World War II.
Yeah, I mean, there's what you're saying, but there's also there's an interesting kind of symbolism to the fact that Pearl Harbor, Michael Bay's Pearl Harbor, comes out a few months before 9/11.
Did it? Wow.
Pearl Harbor's right after Armageddon was like, remember, end of the 90s, it's all this end of the world shit with black presidents, right? Just saying.
Don't make a correlation there.
The voters already have, you know? There's that. So Armageddon is fucking late 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Pearl Harbor is, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Pearl Harbor is 2001.
I wouldn't know. I don't know. I can't remember. I never...
And so, and in the same way that fucking, when, you know, he also did the 13-hour Benghazi movie.
Mm-hmm.
Which is like a real kind of thorn or galvanizing point for thorn in the side of, or pebble in the shoe of, or galvanizing point for a lot of right wingers against Hillary Clinton. Is you know, the story of that, and how in Libya soldiers were essentially stranded. And there's moments of that which we can get into, because it reminded me of a lot of, and it reminded me of stuff that has led up to and past 9/11 in terms of conspiracy language and vibe in this film, which it's not something that's super obvious, but it's something that, coming from that guy at the video store who's pulling everything off the shelf and fucking and trying to, you know, like, take everything in at that time, I'm like, oh shit, okay, yeah. I forgot about this. But we'll get into that. But I mean, it is it's an interesting thing that Michael Bay does. Kind of, he matches that jingoistic fucking vibe that we talked about in fucking Rocky, that Rocky helped set up. Obviously, I mean, like, you have that's not the first time that you have a character that's Go America, but kind of when you make it as pun intended fucking explosive as Michael Bay does, it's easy to go from commercial fucking popular cultural fucking hit blockbuster movie to fucking propaganda.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And the cast is an interesting fucking 80s and 90s cast here. It's you have Sean Connery as the fucking Nicolas Cage is the main guy.
Mm-hmm.
Sean Connery is the
Sean Connery is the gravitas. Sean Connery is the thing that it makes the whole thing legitimate, and makes it gives it a certain legitimacy that film critics will say, well, Sir Sean Connery is in this. And I know there were all kinds of online theories about Sean Connery's character being actually James Bond, a retired Bond, a captured James Bond, whatever the fuck you want to call it. People have a lot of time on their hands, you know.
I mean, there was there's I don't remember exactly what the line is, but he kind of throws little things out there that it makes sense that would be that, or that people in their minds could use that as a through line.
Yeah,
that's fun, you know. I mean, why not?
Yeah.
Fan theories are cool. I can get with fan theories, but also Sean Connery served as this kind of Hannibal Lecter type 90s character where it's like you have to have an anti-hero.
Uh-huh.
You have the protagonist who is an expert, in both cases in the FBI, going to this anti-hero criminal to help them fight this third-party villain. And you have to recruit them onto your side in order to do that. And they're in prison. I think there might have been another kind of movie like that with Ed Harris, or I don't remember. I can't think of it right now, but I feel like there were more instances of that. I just can't back that up right now. But that's kind of what Sean Connery plays. Nicolas Cage needs him to go fight Ed Harris, and the premise is that Ed Harris is a disgruntled general who angry that fallen soldiers' families haven't gotten any kind of compensation or any kind of payouts
Recognition.
or recognition or anything from the U.S. government. They've just kind of been left behind. He goes to the grave of his wife, who on her headstone is described as his wife, and he does in the rain and all that. He's like, forgive me, don't think badly of me, blah blah blah, but I'm gonna fucking become a terrorist. So they decide to take over Alcatraz Island and take 80 some odd tourists as hostages. And Nicolas Cage, a chemical weapons expert, is like, he has to go. And now Sean Connery has to help him go up against Ed Harris. And on Nicolas Cage's side is Michael Biehn. Biehn, however you pronounce it. Like that's fucking Terminator. That's Aliens. David Morse.
Mm-hmm. The great
You
character actor.
recognize
Yeah.
William Forsyth, who interestingly on the TV series of The Untouchables played Al Capone. So I thought that was cool. I used to watch that series, and so that he would play Al Capone, and it has to do with Alcatraz, I thought was interesting. John C. McGinley, one of the members of casts for Oliver Stone, particularly in Platoon. Tony Todd, Candyman.
Mm-hmm.
Fucking John Spencer, you know his face if you're from that time. You may not know the name, but you've seen his face. And then fucking very briefly, which I didn't remember that
I didn't remember either.
Fucking Phillip Baker Hall.
That was a really welcome surprise to see him in there.
I thought it was cool.
Yeah, I loved it.
I was like, fucking Phillip Baker Hall.
Yeah.
Fucking Claire Forlani.
Mm-hmm.
So it's this weird, like, it's not a who's who. It's more of like somewhat of a who.
Yeah.
But you know their faces if you've seen. Those of you who listen to us, pop this motherfucker in the VCR and you'll see, and you'll be like, oh shit, that guy. Oh shit, that guy. Oh shit, that guy. And throw them, mix them in a fucking bag and throw them in a fucking Michael Bay movie. And you've got not this 80s, we're going to fuck shit up, but more of a 90s kind of, yeah, we've been fucked over, we've been left behind, we've been pushed to the margins, we've been written off, Black Hawk Down, V.I.J. And now, we're going to fight back type of thing. And that's the fucking movie we get.
The thing
Michael
about
Bay knows the vocabulary.
He knows what?
He knows the vocabulary.
Yeah. Well, he created this vocabulary, I think. Well, no, he didn't create the vocabulary. He created the style. That he put this vocabulary in a certain style. I think that's the problem with Michael Bay is that it's it either hits with you or it doesn't, and it doesn't hit with me. I don't like it. I don't enjoy it. I think it's there were a couple of moments when John Spencer is giving this speech to William Forsyth about why they put Sean Connery's Mason character away, and 30 years they pissed away his life, and it's said with such seriousness, and it's a moment that's so at odds with what the film is, because I found myself laughing. I found myself really laughing at how stupid I kind of felt sorry for John Spencer, because it was you're trying to give an earnest performance in a film where you're set up as a buffoon. I mean, this is a guy that gets hung off a fucking balcony with I don't know what kind of string Sean Connery wraps him up with, but
around his arm.
Yeah. And there's so many moments where you're just sitting there going, oh, Jesus Christ. The FBI would let that happen? The FBI is really going to let that happen? Get the fuck out of here, But otherwise, you don't have a story. You don't have a film. You don't have any kind of forward motion that's going to keep this thing on the rails. I mean, it's an utterly ridiculous film that every 7 to 12 minutes I'm saying, if they hadn't done that, we wouldn't have a film. If that makes no logical sense why they would do that. Like,
you just gotta
you gotta go with it.
You gotta buy the ticket and take the ride.
Yeah, like Sean Connery has to roll through a Mario Brothers style maze of fire and gears. In a foundry that, why would it be working if Alcatraz has been shut down for the last 40 years? Why is that thing working? I mean, you're sitting there like, this is fucking moronic, but it's fun. It's stupid fun. Why is there a mining system with carts beneath Alcatraz?
Because it's fucking Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. That's why. Duh.
And then they're going to fall off one cart and land on a hanging cart? What
Because Jackie Chan.
Yeah, because but you're watching it and you're just like, this is moronic. This is fucking moronic, and it was crazy because I sent you a text about this. Everything, every set piece in this film looks like Pirates of the Caribbean. You know, and I know
Not even as good. Not as good.
Not even as good.
Pirates of the Caribbean really sets a tone, and the lighting is
it's very immersive. It's very beautifully done. But you could see that the set designers wrote that ride a couple of dozen times too many in their preparation for this, because it's all seemingly there and it's all badly done. I'm just
It looks like a ride at Universal Studios, actually.
It does. It actually does. Maybe that's the comparison that I'm looking for. I had fun watching it, but I'll tell you what I did really like about it. I loved watching the birth of Nicolas Cage, as far as, and people are going to say, well, Cage is weird in earlier films. Yeah, he's fucked up in Peggy Sue Got Married, and he's definitely crazy and wild at heart. But for Nicolas Cage, this is the first time where he normalized a really bizarre character. And what I'm talking about is normalizing in a blockbuster film that would go on to define how these films are made. Because from this, you would get Con Air, you would get the National Treasure series, you would get Gone in 60 Seconds, you would get just so many other action films that followed this template. But I don't think any of those films are decent without the presence of Nicolas Cage. Nicolas Cage really does elevate the material, and there was a part of me that was laughing my ass off watching the film, because there's really three performances in this film. There's Cage, there's Connery. Now Connery, to me, I just would love to have seen the debate. You've heard the story of Dustin Hoffman during the making of Marathon Man, where he's supposed to, where he stayed up for 2 or 3 days to simulate this insomnia or this being tortured, and Olivier
explain the story.
Well, that I can't remember exactly he's being tortured. Sleep deprivation is a part of it, so he shows up on set just looking like shit, tired, beat up because he hasn't allowed himself to sleep. Olivier, as I think a Mengele character. I think he's playing Joseph Mengele, or he's playing a Mengele type character.
Yeah. Is it safe?
The worst dentist of all time. He asked Dustin Hoffman what's going on. Hoffman tells him, and Olivier was supposed to have said, "You should try acting, boy."
Yeah.
And that's
he's doing the method thing.
Yeah, there's a difference between the styles of acting in a generation, and Olivier is definitely from that training, that Royal Shakespearean training of the marks, the lines, and the nuances of delivering the line, not necessarily whatever past memories that I can bring into informing the performance. It's acting. It's acting. You're making it up. And I can imagine that Sean Connery, who was a very good actor, despite being, I think a lot of people would just write him off as an action star, but Sean Connery was a very good actor. Sean Connery had a level of definitely gravitas and importance on the screen. He was captivating, and he was entrancing. You would watch him and you'd be like, Jesus Christ, fucking Connery is... When you can make it look as effortless as Connery does, I don't know if that's training or innate ability. I don't know. I can't be sure. But I can't imagine that it synced between the two of them on what Nicolas Cage was doing. Because Cage is just fucking out there, and Connery is just subtle, smooth. He's delivering the lines. He's saying, just straightforward, matter of fact, this is the story that we're telling, this is the way we're going to do it. And, he's going to go home to fuck the cheerleader because that's Connery. Now, You contrast all of that with Ed Harris. Ed Harris is given a performance that's in a prestige film. This is not a prestige film, but I kind of feel like Ed Harris is wasting his performance in this film because he's all in. He is this guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's not a waste if he's in it, you know?
Yeah, but you know what I'm talking about. You. I think you understand the point that I'm making in the film. This is something that I was really debating with. I don't know how much of this film I actually watched last night because I was just racing through my head all kinds of questions about what I was watching, and the term slumming came through for both Connery and Ed Harris. Not so much for David Morse, because as good an actor as I think he is, he's done a lot of this shit. A lot. There's something to be said for being the character actor that goes in for the paycheck. The paycheck is an actor's job. You want to be able to make the next film. You want to be able to get paid so that you can continue working. You want to be seen. And sometimes being seen will make that lower budget film later on a little bit more easily producible, whatever you want to call it. It might be a little bit easier to get the money for it. But with Ed Harris and Sean Connery, I want to imagine that this isn't necessarily slumming. This is grown men remembering what it was like to be kids and pretending that they're in this world. Like they're having fun with it on that level. I think that's apparent with Sean Connery's performance. The seriousness of Ed Harris in interviews that I've seen with him and the intensity of his performances, I don't know if he has that capacity. You know what I mean? Have you seen Ed Harris in interviews?
I can't remember. No, I don't think so.
Very serious, very to the point, almost no sense of humor, almost no sense of irony or ability to take a step back and say and see that it's all just ridiculous. It's all make believe and it's all ridiculous fun. It's entertainment. Ed Harris always gives something that is heightened. His characters are always very... Ed Harris reminds me of somebody who is very dangerous on and off screen. Because he's not somebody that takes anything lightly. He's there to work. He's there to beat the shit out of it. And he's going to find every aspect of what he's trying to do. The nuances, the backstory, the history. I believe this character. It does kind of bother me because this performance deserves a better film.
It does.
Yeah. So, but he signed on. He knew what he was getting into. This is actually Michael Bay's second film after Bad Boys, and I don't know. It's kind of weird to watch this shit in today's perspective, knowing what Michael Bay would become versus at that time, Michael Bay was somebody they were taking a chance on. So I'm really interested in a weird way, all of these people came together to create the monster that became Michael Bay. And I think cinema as a whole has suffered because of it. These films have made it difficult for better films to be made in the 2000s, 2020s, because it became 2000s, 2010s, 2020s, because it became the spectacle, it became the explosion, big, dumb, and out of control. It's just that's what this movie is. And when you look at this movie compared to Armageddon ups the ante so ridiculous. The drama is so badly scripted and performed. That movie is an embarrassment. That movie makes this look like fucking Taxi Driver. It this is a masterpiece in comparison to what Armageddon and fucking Transformers and all that other shit would be. The Michael Bay is. I enjoyed watching this. I had a good time with it, but this is dirty. Somehow this is fucking dirty. I gotta go and watch something good. I really have to sit down and watch.
Yeah.
I gotta pull something off the shelf and maybe read some subtitles because this doesn't push me any further.
It's just fun. And that's great. But that's all it is.
That's hilarious to hear you say that.
It's just fucking fun. And it's interesting to look at the styles because it's like, and we're gonna have to do an episode just on. And I've been talking about this every once in a while, talking about just the method, and it's like, well, what the fuck is the method? Mm-hmm. But we just really look at clips and we describe those clips so that people can also look at them at, after they listen to us so they can remember them or whatever. But
you know what?
You said some.
What, the text?
Go ahead.
The text that I sent you last night?
What were we going to say?
The text that I sent you last night was Sean Connery bringing that old school Shakespearean English stage acting methodology to the performance, which is what he does, what he knows. It's that he's adapted all of that to Hollywood and the big screen. I was contrasting that with Nicolas Cage's method acting in this film. But this is not method acting, although I think in Nick Cage's head, he is method acting. I think Nick Cage is so fucking nuts that's what he's digging into, and it's manifesting itself on the screen in that way. I don't think he's all there. I think he's a fucking bug out, man. I think there's something not right in. And God bless him, too, because to take the chances that he does in this and subsequent films, I think that would scare the shit out of most actors. And I think a lot of directors and producers would stop him in his tracks and would not allow him. Thank God that he was able to do... I think if he hadn't done Wild at Heart and people saw how captivating that performance was... if he didn't have a director as accommodating and as specific, that's a weird combination, but I think it is. I think it's pretty accurate in describing what David Lynch does. If he hadn't had the freedom to create the character in that movie, and granted, that was not a big box office hit. I don't think a lot of people saw it, but the people who did see it knew that we could make something fun out of this. And if you have a movie as ridiculous as these Michael Bay films are, you can put the Nicolas Cage style into that film. I mean, Nicolas Cage has been, since I first saw him, I think I first saw him in Raising Arizona, which I think is one of the great slapstick comedies. It's a film... If you've never seen it, it's a Coen Brothers film, but it's basically a live-action Looney Tunes film. And I love it because of that, because it's so wild and absurd. And Cage plays a character that is both an idiot, but one of the smartest people on screen. Everybody else is even stupider than him. And it takes... I think it takes a lot of balls to go that far with a character and not be afraid of looking buffoonish. It would be very easy to dismiss this film on the performances alone. But I think there is something to be said about these guys looking like they're having so much fun giving the performances and living and fighting in this world, that it makes it palpable, it makes it exciting, it makes it a lot of fun. The later films that were not directed by Michael Bay prove that even better, I think. I think Con Air is the peak of these ridiculous movies.
It'll be interesting to see that transition, to see what transition there is there.
Yeah.
It's interesting too that you would talk about, because Connery, I don't think he has.
You don't think he has stage training?
I don't think he has classical training. I could be wrong. I just haven't. I'm not familiar with. Some people. It's like, did they go to Lambda, the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art, or did they go to RADA, the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art? The Hopkinses, the people that are in this line coming from, as you described, these modern Shakespearean classical stars. So Sir John Gielgud, Sir Olivier.
Well, he's definitely not an Olivier or a Gielgud. He's not one of those. But I can imagine him just before the Brian Coxes and the Hopkins. I can imagine him. I can kind of imagine him in the Hopkins world.
Because I think he comes out of the 60s, right? Basically.
Yeah.
It's his shit is all, and so even the method itself predates him. But I get what you're saying in terms of the dichotomy between, like, the approach. So, okay, taking a step back, what is the method? So the method is, and we'll do an episode on this at some point, months from now, whatever. So Stanislavski develops a system. At early turn of the century actor develops a system because he sees the way that performers on stage are performing, and he says, this is presentational, this is showy, this is acty. He wants to look for something that is representational, where an actor can take on the emotions of the character and be that person on stage rather than perform it, right? You are performing it, but rather than have it look like acting, you can move closer to a type of inhabiting a character, being a character on stage. And so he develops a system, and that gains traction, and then you have popularity of that in the United States that finds its way into cinema. And you have three major teachers of the method in the United States on the East Coast: Lee Strasberg with the group theater and the Actors Studio, who Lee Strasberg is in Godfather 2. He plays Hyman Roth. Yeah. You have Stella Adler, and you have Sanford Meisner, or Sandy Meisner. And so Meisner technique is like another jumping off point of that. And so in the 50s, you get a generation of actors who are method actors. The most famous ones are Marlon Brando, Montgomery Clift, and James Dean. Marilyn Monroe also studied at the Actors Studio, a whole bunch of other people. And then in the 70s, you get another wave of famous method actors. Three most famous are
Hold on a minute. Okay, go ahead. The three most famous are...
The three most famous of the 70s method actors are probably De Niro, Pacino, and Dustin Hoffman. So it's immersing yourself. You're using your imagination. You're saying, well, what if this? What if I were a king? How would I be? You're doing all of these techniques that we'll get into at another time, and you're using those to affect your actual emotions on stage so that you can kind of better produce those emotions in the moment. So then, all right, so having said that, it's just interesting, like, Dustin Hoffman staying up for days in order to portray a character that has been up for days, right? Yeah. And Olivier is like, well, try acting, just pretend. Dustin Hoffman's perspective is, I don't want to. It's not, acting isn't good enough. I want to be that.
Mm-hmm.
I want the camera to capture that without me having to act it out. So my question to you is like, because you say, okay, you're saying, and I don't know how much of this is like you're literally saying that, but having said it, it's like, what do you mean when you say that you think that Nicolas Cage thinks he's method acting?
I think he's that crazy. Is that it's a joke about his mental state in creating these characters. Like, I don't know if Nicolas Cage has a grasp of reality that, and I'm not joking. I'm really serious about this. I think growing up the way it's possible that he was eccentric no matter what. As a kid, he could have been eccentric. But growing up as part of the Coppola family, because his real name is Nicholas Coppola, as many people know, he's the son of Francis Ford Coppola. He's the nephew of Talia Shire and, grandson of Carmine Coppola, I guess. There's so many...
What, you're saying he's Francis Ford Coppola's son?
No, he's he's his nephew.
He's his nephew.
Yeah,
okay.
I think it's Francis Ford Coppola had another brother or a sister that wasn't Talia Shire. So basically, he grew up in a showbiz family, but he also, I think he went to, I don't know if he went to Hollywood High, but he was with the Sheens. He was with he grew up with all these other Hollywood brats that weren't the cinema Hollywood brats. I'm not talking about the Spielberg, De Palma, Scorsese Hollywood brats. I'm talking about real life Hollywood High brats. Hollywood High on Sunset and over there by the In and Out.
Sunset and Highland.
Yeah, Sunset and Highland. So this is the world he comes out of. This is the world that he knows, which, just by my experience in LA, is a warped understanding of the reality. So there's a part of me
in a warped industry.
Yeah, in a warped industry, and both being artistic and growing up wealthy in that manner, I think it would shape your perspective on things. So the method that he's practicing up on that screen is
the Nicolas Cage method.
Exactly. I mean, it's true to the fucked up world that he lives in. And that's what makes me laugh about it, is that he's so out there and crazy, and it's really apparent in the films and the performances. I don't think you can go through Nicolas Cage's filmography and find a single performance that is what you would call normal or safe or in any realistic way, a person that you would meet in this world. But what makes Nicolas Cage fascinating is you ignore all that and you buy into the character and the character's existence in this world. So I'm fascinated. I love his performances. I love what he does. I've like I said, I've never been disappointed by something that I've seen Nicolas Cage in. I've never been disappointed by Nicolas Cage in a film. I've been disappointed in a number of the films that he's made, but not in the films, not in the performances. And when he has it, I mean, I think he was perfect in Bringing Out the Dead, and I think Scorsese cast somebody that A, could get the film made, but B, really did. That's probably the most honest that I think Nicolas Cage has ever gotten to giving a performance that reflects the world in which the performance exists, and how the character would react. Sleep deprived, drinking too much, taking vitamin B shots, and then tormented and haunted by the spirits of emergencies lost. In this film, this is just silly. He's a biochemist, and he's defusing bombs. And the most ridiculous bomb system that I've ever seen, a chain of green liquid balls.
Glass.
Yeah.
They look like fucking, it's like basically they're like toxic anal beads.
Exactly.
They're like lime green.
Exactly. You know? And Bay has to have that moment where one falls, hits the...
Pull him out of the fucking thing, yeah.
Yeah. Hits the foot and rolls, and he has to race after it, catching it. And he manages to put the other ones gently into some... I don't even know what the fuck he put them in. It's ridiculous. The whole movie is an embarrassment of cinematic cliches and overreaching action spectacle. But it's fun. And it's stupid. It's just fun, yeah. So it's like, there are a few times when I will say, it's just a movie. This is one of those times when I'll say, it's just a movie. That's all it is. It's fucking moronic. It's dumb. I kind of feel sorry for some of the dialogue that has to be spoken in this movie. There's Michael Bay's fascination with loud, ridiculous black extra characters. A streetcar driver, oh baby, keep it together, baby, keep it together, you know, or a cut to a black man in a jail cell. This is what did he call this thing? This tour is fucked up, you know, and it's like that's very typical. If you watch Michael Bay films, you'll see he does a lot of that shit with black extra characters. I don't know if you noticed it. I saw it, and it made me laugh on the level of stupidity.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
there's all of that.
In one of the later Transformer films, he had two cars that spoke in jive. I mean, it was like watching Airplane.
It was like, yeah, Airplane. I speak jive.
Excuse me, stewardess. I speak jive. Okay, go ahead, Mrs. Cleaver. Fucking moronic.
I was watching this film and I paused it because I was like, oh shit! Yeah. Like this, I started to see it as echoing. I had to put on my tinfoil hat for a little while because I was like, oh, this is fucking. This is putting me in 90s terrorism, 90s fucking. Because Ed Harris's character is basically a homegrown terrorist. He's a domestic terrorist.
Well, I think they based it on a 60 Minutes interview with a general who was upset by something similar to this story, if I'm correct. I can't remember. But some of the reading that I'd done on the film. But it's I mean, imagine that you're a general. Imagine that you're a war hero. And these men's lives are in your hands. You're leading them and you're telling them, I'm going to take care of you, and we're going to take care of each other, only to have your government betray you. So that's why I said the idea in this movie, the kernel of an idea in this movie is really good. I think it's a very powerful and very honest story that should have been told. I just wish Michael Bay hadn't been the one to tell it. And
we're still dealing with some of these ideas because let me explain.
Okay.
Ed Harris describes them as patriots. So put on your fucking tinfoil hat, put up your American flag, get in the time machine and go back to. He quotes Jefferson. He says the tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. This is the kind of shit, this is the kind of language that comes out, I mean, from before, but especially it has its moment in the 90s. And Alex Jones
Good old Alex
comes
Jones,
out of the
yeah.
90s. Alex Jones comes out of the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
What pissed off Alex Jones in the early 90s? There's Ruby Ridge. Go back if you guys are interested. Go to the fucking go back to our gun control episode. It's episode 164 on Libsyn,
Mm-hmm.
of the archival. We talk about Ruby Ridge. There was a shootout. You have the militia movement coming out of the 90s. You have Waco in 93. Waco is on the back of the militia movement, the patriot movement, the sovereign citizen movement. They're all intertwined. Christian nationalism, all in the 90s. Ruby Ridge in 92. Waco, which wasn't the aspect that pissed people off with Waco was because Janet Reno, the ATF, the FBI went in and essentially killed those people. We talk about that in that episode.
Yeah.
That inspired Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols for Oklahoma City in 95. So this film is 96.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all happening around the same time. You had William Cooper. I don't know if you're familiar with that name or if you remember. I mentioned it. I mentioned it for the 9/11 episode.
Mm-hmm.
William Cooper wrote a book called "Behold a Pale Horse," and he takes that's from a line in the Book of Revelation, and I think it's one of the lines that they like to quote in cowboy movies. I think maybe they quoted in Pale Rider, and then later in the 90s they quoted with Tombstone. It's and all hell followed with him, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a book of conspiracy. That guy, he ended up dying in a shootout so I said fucking Pearl Harbor, the movie comes out in early 2001. September 11th, 9/11 attacks. Okay. By November, William Cooper has a shootout with cops in Arizona because he didn't want to pay his taxes because he was basically into that sovereign citizen shit. He was a contemporary of Alex Jones and a competitor of Alex Jones. Behold a Pale Horse is all about fucking who killed JFK, aliens, and all of this. It's a conspiracy classic. All of this shit is happening in the 90s. There's the militia of Montana. There's Posse Comitatus. There are the Minutemen. These groups and these ideas have currently morphed into the Oath Keepers, the Three Percenters, the Proud Boys. All of that has its roots in the 90s and borders on some of like the white Aryan resistance and which is outside of prison, Aryan Brotherhood inside. I'm getting super conspiracy right now because when Ed Harris talks of them as being these patriots, that's the language that they use. And he says, well, George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, they had to fight their revolution. That's what these guys think that they're doing. And a lot of these people are law enforcement, and a lot of these people are veterans. Some are still enlisted. They're right-wing, Christian identity, white nationalist, anti-Zionist occupational government, which right now with all the shit that's going on in Gaza, not the student protesters, but the racist, there's a distinction between Israeli government and Israeli occupational governmental policies and Jewish people. There's a difference there. People who support Israeli political practices and what's happening in Gaza will try to say that there isn't a distinction, and the racists will also say that there isn't a distinction. So I'm making the distinction just for the record now. These people they're anti-Zionist because they hate Jews, not because they hate policies. No, not because they love Palestinians, whether Muslim, Christian, whatever the fuck. They're anti-Clinton, hardcore, going back to Bill Clinton. They're anti-immigration. They're anti-FEMA. This is all the shit about the FEMA camps and all that shit too. And they're anti-tax. And they'll talk about the Federal Reserve, all this crazy shit. Mix that in now with, in the 90s, the aspect of, quote, now to Nicolas Cage's shit, the Unabomber. We see in the film, he gets a package.
Yeah.
The Unabomber had been doing stuff for years, but 93 through 95, and then he's arrested in 96, same year as this comes out. That's in the consciousness in the 90s. And you get, remember that movie with Jeff Bridges and Tommy Lee Jones, where he's an
Blown
explosive,
away. Yeah, blown away.
That kind of shit is happening.
That was IRA, wasn't it?
That's IRA. Sometimes you have movies about it's the Irish Republican Army. It's that versus sometimes it's Arabs, sometimes it's this, sometimes it's that. Also, there was this film. They're talking about sarin, the sarin gas. There were sarin gas attacks in Japan in the 90s.
I remember on the train. Wasn't it on the train?
On the train.
Yeah.
Right. It was this group, cult with quotes group. The reason I use the quotes is because in religious studies, the term cult means something different. But the way in common parlance we describe cult, so it was the Om Shinriko sect. I think they used gas in Nagano, and they also used it on the train in Tokyo. Now, there's another element that my ears perked up as a person who kind of like used to pay attention to a lot of conspiracy shit. Was they talk about thermite?
Yeah.
And thermite was going to be in the bomb when the planes were going to fly over, and potentially. In the story, it's like, well, Ed Harris and his rogue soldiers have these hostages on the rock, right? So they need to figure this out. They don't want to pay the ransom. How do they do this? The president gives the okay to do an airstrike against Alcatraz because Ed Harris has this fucking these missiles with sarin gas, anal beads pointed right at San Francisco, right? And that's not a joke. That's part of the story.
Yeah.
Not the anal bead part, but okay. So then, so Sean Connery and Nicolas Cage have to sneak onto Alcatraz Island the way that Sean Connery's character had escaped, but they have to go in and they have to disarm the shit. If that doesn't work, boom, the airstrike. And what are they gonna use? They're gonna use thermite. Conspiracy theorists after 9/11 were looking at the ways that the Twin Towers. This is totally unrelated, but I'm just saying it because it popped out at me.
Mm-hmm.
They talk about how in 9/11 3 towers fell: the North Tower, the South Tower, and Building Number 7. Right?
Well, they say they talk about two. They talk about 2 towers. A lot of people forget that third.
Well, okay. In
popular culture,
In general, in the general knowledge is you say, well, at the World Trade Center complex, the Twin Towers fell. Mm-hmm. Now 3 towers collapsed that day. The third one was Building Number 7, and it was on that same complex, which was the World Trade Center. So conspiracy theorists say, well, look, the third tower that collapsed wasn't hit by a plane. Only the first 2 towers, but all 3 towers fell the same. They say this was an implosion. And they say in order for it to have fallen down at free fall speed, this is according to conspiracy theorists, you would have to have explosions inside the building that cut the main support columns. And then they said that you could see that the building was smoldering for days after and all this shit, right? And that with certain like satellite imagery or whatever, you could see like hot spots in the rubble, etc. What could have done this? They go to thermite. So when I heard thermite and another actually thermite with some other compound, and it becomes thermate. And so when it jumped out at me, I was like, this is fucking, this is a crazy time capsule conspiracy kind of thing that it sent me on, because Ed Harris's character sounds just like one of those guys that fucking, what's his name? Bowling for Columbine. Michael Moore.
Mm-hmm.
One of those guys that Michael Moore would have interviewed. Some fucking sovereign citizen, white nationalist, soldier with a fucking grudge. And this shit is totally fucking 90s. So it was in a way that was more interesting, me going on that little journey in my mind and pausing it and going like, oh shit, okay, thermite, okay, blah, blah, thermite, and doing those little diagrams that I like to create in my mind for you guys, well, for myself, and then you guys get to either suffer or benefit from it. That to me was in a way more interesting than the fucking movie itself, because the movie was the fucking movie. But it took me on a little journey that I wasn't expecting, in terms of like placing it in its time within these realms of like actual crime and actual homegrown terrorism, and then it also reminded me, it was like, well, this wasn't the first time that Alcatraz had been taken over in this film. So Alcatraz was actually taken over in 1969 by the American Indian movement. John Trudell was the spokesman, and they were able to get everyone off by basically cutting off supplies to them. They were there for over a year. The reason why they were there was because in one of the Fort Laramie treaties, it said that any surplus land not being used by the government would go back to indigenous nations. And so when Alcatraz stopped being a tourist attraction and they closed it, or I don't know if it was when it stopped being an actual prison or whether it stopped being a tourist attraction.
It's when they stopped. It's when they closed it as a prison.
As a prison,
but before they started.
Before it became a tourist, right? Because I've actually I haven't set foot on it, but I've done the boat tour around it. So it was after that. It was members of the AIM movement, American Indian movement, were like, "Hey, this is surplus fucking land." And remember, this is the time of like political unrest, Vietnam, late '60s, all that shit.
Yeah.
So there were no shootouts then. There were shootouts when Wounded Knee, the site of the original Wounded Knee massacre, was taken over. The cops went and fucking, I mean, they were shooting back and forth, but there was bloodshed then. But even though this is a ridiculous, fake as fuck movie, there are actually real life parallels that are more interesting than anything that you'll find in the film itself. Whether it's, there was a guy mailing bombs, there was a group that did a sarin attack on the metro in Japan, there were groups of white nationalists that were heavily armed, that were ready to fucking take on the government, or at least pretending to be, or believing they could, yeah. Oh, you're right. Until the feds were like, okay, here we go. And a lot of this shit is still, like I said, still happening now. And Alex Jones is one of those fucking loud voices. And it carried on. And this is this is an inside job. This is an inside job up until Sandy Hook and all that shit. So some of this shit is fake as fuck, and some of this shit is real.
Well, that's the great thing about, popular drama, is that it really can bastardize the truth of the world that we live in, and it's weird because you're right. The real life instances are of white nationalism, religious fundamentalism, and all that. But Ed Harris's character, at least I don't think he is ever painted as a full-on villain. I think he's painted in such a manner as to elicit a certain degree of sympathy. Somebody who has fought for his country, somebody who has believed in the American dream, has compromised certain elements of his his character because you have to in that job, only to be disappointed by the United States government. Now, the difficulty I have in that is that if you do that kind of a job, how are you not aware that the government is going to take the precautions that they're going to take? How do you, in that position, how the fuck are you going to expect the government to not cover the tracks and create plausible deniability? In not even plausible deniability, just fucking deniability. They don't care. They don't give a shit if it's plausible.
Right, especially when you're doing fucking war crimes and illegal shit.
Yeah, So it's like, how do you? I think Ed Harris and both Ed Harris and David Morse do everything they can, and everything that they are able to elevate these two roles, because there's a part of me that thinks that they don't think that an actual story of this power will ever get made. So let's take what we have here and make it as honest and as real as possible, and create characters that are not necessarily good men in some respects, but are at least complicated and conflicted and understanding of what the fog of war actually is. So I think he's good in it. I think both of them are very good in it.
There's also the aspect of let's give it this credit, is that you have the aspect of, let's say, the hierarchy within a terrorist group, right? Mm-hmm. And Scott Atran, the scholar, has talked a little bit about this, is that people who become, let's say you have within that pyramid or within that hierarchy, you'll have these true believers who they actually think that it's the thing of okay, even I think George Carlin has a part where he's like, well, this person is a freedom fighter, but this person is a terrorist, something to that effect,
Well, what he said was, if I think he said El Salvador freedom fighters. Oh God! If freedom fighters fight, I can't even remember I remember the bit though. I remember the fucking bit. God damn it! I think it's from Doing It Again.
The basics is that in a certain context, someone is called a freedom fighter, in another, or revolutionary. In another context, they're called a terrorist. Mm-hmm. And it just depends on who's doing who's describing, right? And
who's writing the history, basically.
Well, exactly. And so Ed Harris believes in his cause, and he knows that what he's doing is that he's going against his own government. And in the film, he describes he's making this threat, and he's threatening to kill civilians who are hostages, but also the civilians who are under the threat of the toxic anal beads. But he knows that he's not going to go through with it. He's just trying to get the ransom money so that he can distribute that money amongst the families of these fallen soldiers that he's working for, or whatever.
Yeah.
But then you have another level where Tony Todd is like, I'm not a fucking soldier anymore. Like, we're bullshitting each other. Once money got involved, where it's like we're taking hostages and we're doing a ransom, I'm a fucking mercenary now. Pay me.
I want my fucking money.
I want my fucking money. And then there's another level, and this is kind of like what Scott Atran gets to, is that you have people who become radicalized, who are, a lot of times they get caught up into the adventure element of it. They're usually the youngest ones. They're the ones that get caught up. A lot of them, especially like Islamic terrorists, they don't start off as these crazy fundamentalist, like religious, fanatics. A lot of times they're part of these street gangs, or they're part of like soccer clubs, and they're super into that.
Yeah.
And then they end up just transferring that. They're more like band fanatics. And then they transfer that. They become radicalized, and they transfer into that shit. And then you have that, or else you have these fucking delinquents.
Mm-hmm.
These crazy criminals that just get attached to whether it's a gang or it's this or it's that. And then now they're fucking fighting these battles. And in the film, it does an interesting job of showing that, like, there's a mutiny against Ed Harris. Once Ed Harris actually he fires the missile, spoiler fucking alert, but then he reroutes it into the bay because he doesn't want to kill civilians. And once he doesn't kill civilians, they're like, the next level. Tony Todd's like, give me my fucking money.
Yeah.
Then the next level is like, if we're not getting the money, we're still going to fucking kill the civilians.
Yeah.
And it's not enough to kill Ed Harris at this point. So it at least the film does an interesting job of, even though it turns the lowest level of those bad guys into kind of just black hat bad guys, at least it does a job of differentiating between the different types of bad guys and what their different motivations are. Versus a lot of times you just have like they're all with the same brushstroke.
What you're saying is correct, but it still doesn't change the fact that it fails at it miserably, and it's a missed opportunity to tell a better. It's a missed opportunity to tell a story in a better way, with a more skilled and nuanced director. But
yes,
the problem is, it's also a story that popular media, such as cinema, this is not something that's going to play very well in your local multiplex. The Rock will. It's all action. It's all excitement. There's a clear hero, and as it plays out, you have a convenient couple of bad guys to take the place of the bad guy that you were supposed to be worried about in the first place.
Right.
Tony Todd and the young soldier, I can't remember his name. Those are the ones that we got to be worried about right from the get-go. There's a part of you for obvious reasons. You look at the film and you know Ed Harris is not a killer. As ridiculous as that is to say, Ed Harris is a soldier, not a killer. In the vocabulary of those characters. Yeah. He doesn't have it in him. I could see it in his eyes.
You read it. Yeah, you read it in his eyes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I for me, what this film, I'm happy that you're bringing out all these deeper elements to the film because they're there, because they're in the story, because they're in the
creative somehow.
They're in the element. This story is based in a world that we can actually relate to. It just disappoints me to know that it's the film doesn't do it a very just service And that's kind of one of the reasons that I didn't see Pearl Harbor either, because I couldn't stand to watch one of the defining moments of American history. And I'm not talking about I'm not one of these rah Americana kind of guys, but that's a very important story that deserves to be told in a nuanced and balanced way. And I couldn't see Michael Bay having the talent to pull it off. I still haven't seen Pearl Harbor, and I don't think I ever will. I don't want to see 2.5 hours of a buildup of love between Ben Affleck and whoever the fuck the starlet of the day was, and John Voight playing Franklin Roosevelt. It doesn't appeal to me. So, but this was fun. This movie's a good time.
Stupid fun.
Stupid fun. And that's exactly what it is. It's stupid and it's fun. And I look at myself later on and say, you were stupid for liking it, but every once in a while you gotta slip into that. So I'm happy that we watched it. I'm looking forward to going over Con Air next week because I haven't seen that in many a moon. And I hope it's as stupid and as moronic as I remember it to be, with an all-star fucking cast, an all-star cast of 90s craziness. What do you want to say as we close this bad boy out?
BuyMeACoffee.com/watch RickRamos. This episode goes to, once again, Cornelius Burrows. BuyMeACoffee.com/watch RickRamos. Keep watching. We will too. Till next time.
Thank you so much, everybody, and thank you, Cornelius, for your many years of dedication and support. For the rest of you, we appreciate you tuning in. Bye-bye now.